You are listening to Talking Star Wars.
Hello, Star Wars fans. I'm Alex,
And I'm Connor.
and today we are talking about Star Wars.
As we do, but haven't had for a little while, just taking a little personal hiatus to not get crushed by the uh, offerings of life, I suppose, is the kind way to say it.
But we're happy to be back and happy to be talking about the most recent piece of Star Wars fiction to be released, which was A Visions Season 3. Now, longtime listeners will know that we like to, when media comes out, do a quick survey about it, talk about what themes we liked, kind of take the long view, look at it as a whole, but also talk about those particular moments and areas that we specifically enjoyed, both in the context of the greater Star Wars universe and just as an intrinsic piece of art. So
Yeah.
that is what we'll be doing today as we walk through all 9 episodes of Vision Season 3. Yeah. So Connor, what are your thoughts about the season as a whole before we kind of dive into each episode?
So I think unlike our previous episodes on the different Vision seasons, it's been a little bit of time since we've had uh, seen the episodes. We broke it up into, I think, two different sessions to watch them all. And I very much appreciate the opportunity to sort of respond to so many of the previous stories that happened in season one. Being able to have follow-ups, direct follow-ups to episodes is a way to uh, take the season in a new direction. Because in the first season, we have a number of animation studios in Japan who crafted episodes. Season two, a number of animation studios from all around the world, just giving a different sort of sensibility and flavor to each episode. This one, I think it's I'm not going to say a con. It's a pro to have that approach where we're seeing direct follow-ups to certain storylines. I do miss some of the variety from season two, but this still remains one of my favorite Disney era Star Wars pieces of media, just because of how diverse of storytelling and um, sort of the different lenses that we get to see the world of Star Wars through. How about
Season
yourself?
three, I would agree. Season 3, much like Season 1, is, as Connor said, entirely from Japanese animation studios, several of which produced episodes from Season 1. And also as stated, 3 of the episodes are direct sequels to episodes from Season 1 of Visions, expanding on those earlier stories. I do agree with Connor. I think some of this is a little samey, might be the right word, or a lot of it's exploring kind of the same space. I will see we get. I don't think there's really many stories that are set in a recognizable era. There's no Tatooine Rhapsody here with Boba Fett. Um, we're not getting. All of the stories are very original, which is what I appreciated. But we have quite a few stories about Jedi and bounty hunters, uh, and we have a couple more experimental stories. But we get really experimental in season 3, which we will leave up to our viewers to decide how experimental they like being. But yeah, any other thoughts, Connor, before we dive into episode 1?
I just hope the show keeps continuing. Between this and the Tales of series, I think it works well with that sort of short form storytelling where we get to see like highlights of different angles of the universe that we haven't seen, and especially with the visions that we likely would never get to see if the show didn't exist. So I just hope they continue on with more. Uh, but I do have a feeling, just as I have been refamiliarizing myself with the episodes, that sameness is probably one of the cons of the season, where a lot of episodes focus around precocious children in over their head, getting themselves into wacky shenanigans, which we'll see as we dive into each episode.
Yeah, we also have a lot of droids, and I would say if we were to pick some themes, we got a lot of droid characters exploring kind of
Mhm.
droid personhood, as well as I said, much like season 2, perhaps an over-reliance on the precocious youth.
Mhm.
But we will let you make the determination as we review each episode.
Yes.
Uh, So we kick off season 3 with a sequel to one of the most popular episodes in season 1, The Duel, with The Duel Payback. by Kamikaze Duga Anima as the production company, Japanese anime studio. And much like the first episode, just to talk about it first, visually, the Duel uh, sequel is stunning.
Mhm.
Done in black and white with only lightsabers and a few other things having any color to them. It was, of course, a visual treat.
And such a um, influx of the feudal Japan aesthetics, because Star Wars has always been inspired by Japanese culture, along with many other pieces of culture and mythology, folklore, things like that. But uh, in what we have here with the dual episodes, it just dives so much into that aesthetic of Akira, or yeah, Akira Kurosawa. There we go. Just to fitting in with the fashion, fitting in with the style of fighting, the style of visuals that we get here. So, between that and just like, can't think of a better word than the badassery of our Ronin character here. A dark side user who is not affiliated with the Sith or the overarching empire of dark side users is very interesting. There's a reason why he has a sequel episode, a spin-off book, an action figure. He's a compelling character, both design and narrative wise.
Yeah. So one thing to say off the bat is they did a spin-off book, and then this episode immediately contradicts it.
Ah,
So
fun.
we now have multiple continuities for the spin-off to the spin-off, which is, of course, not the ideal situation you want to be in, because there is a book that explores the Ronin's backstory and history, that is also a direct sequel to the episode, which is wildly different than this episode. Could you technically try to place them in the same continuity again? I suppose. But the Ronin we see is not exactly the tortured former head of the Sith that is depicted in that novel.
So, what would
So,
you say the differences are in his characterization in this second episode here?
well, between the book that was released about the Ronin novel, uh, there's thematic continuity, which is sometimes more important in these kind of spin-offs, in that we have Sith and Jedi are not necessarily depicted as good and evil.
Mhm.
They both use the light and dark side. They're simply competing orders of Force users, more in kind of a law chaos axis than a good evil axis. Where Jedi are just like samurai like knights that serve lords and sometimes do horrible things in the name of their lords. And I do like that we got this incredibly murderous Jedi that
Mhm.
was someone who had previously confronted the Ronin back when he was a general, and was looking for revenge and was horrifyingly powerful.
Yes, this Jedi is horrifying. Uh, he's almost like the inverse of Darth Vader in some ways, where he is also probably more machine now than man. But instead of having this, ghoulish demonic helmet, he has a faceplate, for the lower half of his face that's just a realistic grinning smile that never changes. That's I don't know, just they did well to make the Jedi appear frightening, which I don't think has ever been done.
No, you definitely see what a Jedi Master is like to fight against when they're an antagonist,
Mhm.
uh, and not in a situation where they're not really 100% justified. We've seen Jedi Masters do powerful and dangerous things before, but this is one that shows like, oh, if a Jedi Master decided you need to die, how terrifying that would be to face.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, as a work of Star Wars fiction, I always knock points on something that contradicts its own expanded universe materials. Like,
Mhm.
come on, well, why are you releasing expanded universe materials and then not also using that? So I can see like, oh yeah, the studio didn't decide to write the novel, so they told the story they wanted to. But that's why we have like canon consultants and things like that. I do give it top points for visual, uh, just the visuals overall, and
Mhm.
like in the subtle world building in the visuals, like the old gambling house in a partially dismantled AT-AT at the beginning was just such a nice tribute and
Mhm.
aesthetic.
Yeah. It's I'm unfamiliar with the novel, so I didn't, don't have the opportunity to do that comparison in terms of the character. But this is definitely a world that you can imagine as being old Republic. Um, Even if, I think there are some elements of the episode of the first season where you can see some Imperial remnants, but even so, this Visions isn't meant to slot right into any major continuity. One thing I'm curious about is if the Ronin novel was written or had any contribution made to it from the original author of the initial episode.
Yeah, I think both were just produced by Disney. It does not look like they were written by the same people.
Okay, so that helps to explain some of the contradictions there. But what'll come up later on is that we will have more opportunities to see some of these stories in the future. Is that something that you would like from this Ronin universe, or are you satisfied with what we have received?
Then it's probably whenever I have a sequel episode to something that's supposed to be a one-off, I'm like, did this sequel add or explore themes that were posed by the first episode that still needed to be answered? Uh, I would say somewhat. Like it was interesting to see him fight against a Jedi Master rather than the Sith, but it ends up still, I think, holding too many of its secrets close to the chest. Uh, it's like you have to pose new mysteries, and we still are just as confused about who the Ronin is and why he's doing what he does at the end of the second episode as the first. So you can let that mystery play out. He's like, oh, when it's a one-off, but when it continues, you kind
Mhm.
of then have to start building the world that your character inhabits.
Right. You hope that some of the questions posed by the first installment are going to be answered in the second. This was more of a like a yes and where it was like, oh yes, yes, yes to all of these things, but we're going to explore this new territory as well, without so much retreading or delving into what the first one was trying to do so much.
And then as a final point in this episode, is first of many that have a powerful badass droid character
Oh
in
yes.
the form of the Ronin's R2 unit, who still contains many weapons and a sassy attitude.
Mhm. As the best droids do.
Yeah, and it embodies an entire defense system in this one, and shoots a bunch of people.
As a good droid should do. But yeah, any other thoughts on the dual payback?
No, I think that's good for episode one of Visions season three. So now moving on to Visions season three, episode two, The Song of Four Winds by Project Studio Q. So initial thoughts on this one, Connor.
So, this is a spoiler episode, as we know. I can only remember this episode as uh, precocious young girl gets X-Wing mech armor, which
See, that's
isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's certainly a tonal shift from the previous episode, which I think is, certainly more serious. I'm trying to see which studio animated. Let's see, we have Project Studio Q. Trying to see what else they produced from season one.
I don't think they were a producer of season one.
I thought they were. I could be wrong though.
Oh, they made the twins.
Okay, so Project Studio Q also made the Twins, which is probably one of the more anime leaning. Um, Try not to say anything too negative or derogatory, but it's aesthetic. It's a youthful aesthetic. It is an adventurous, non-realistic aesthetic. Um, and it's fine. It's probably not for me. It was entertaining, but at the same time, when I go to my Star Wars, there's a certain level of seriousness that I'd like to see out of it.
At least taking itself seriously, even if the premise is ridiculous. Like you could certainly have a
Mhm.
Star Wars comedy. But
Sure.
yeah, I mean, the X-Wing mech armor felt very anime. I agree.
Mhm.
And I'm just distracted by the fact that the princess, because again, the main female character is
Mhm.
a princess. Oh, we don't know what or where. She's just dressed as princess. Has no sleeves in a frosty ice area.
Hmm.
Um, and she does rescue a tiny, defenseless, force-sensitive creature from a village. So, I mean, force-sensitive guy is kind of cool. He's tiny, he's cute.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, her R2 droid becomes her X-wing armor. But yeah, it's just like, oh, I must prove myself. And then I'll talk to the admiral, and the admiral doesn't want me to prove myself. But at the beginning, like, has she made any realizations? Has she chosen or changed anything? She did decide to rescue the cool little force sensitive creature. But where are we going? What was the point here other than showing Princess in X-Wing armor, which is, not a bad goal, but I was looking for something a little bit meatier, especially after season two explored
Hmm.
such important themes.
Yeah, it didn't have so much a deeper meaning. It was much more concerned with the spectacle, which, yes, Star Wars is a spectacle. It is, as George Lucas says, made for children. But even then, I think there's a line. It makes me think of the Bandits of Golak from season two. That was the uh, episode produced in India, and that had a precocious child, but it also had stakes. We
Yeah,
worried about the characters because the villains were threatening. The threats felt real. This was more of a fun romp, if
yeah,
anything.
I was never really worried that the princess character would actually suffer harm in the Song of Four Winds. So overall, I mean, it wasn't a bad episode. It added to we are now up to two badass droids on our badass droid count for this season.
Mhm.
With her R2 unit that becomes her armor was quite cool, but not as strong thematically, not exploring anything particularly interesting. It's kind of like, oh, what if Din Djarin was a princess and a member of the rebellion and saved a different force sensitive creature? It's kind of like a mashup of The Mandalorian and A New Hope
Mhm.
if Leia was the protagonist.
Right. Or, what do they call those? Not AVA, but DVA? No, what's OVA, like an OVA of what Star Wars could have been if Japan made it in the late 80s rather than George Lucas making a movie in the 70s.
hmm But hey, it's like a 12-minute episode, so go ahead and give it a watch. See what
Mhm.
you think.
So
Right.
for this next episode, you'll have to refresh me because I'm looking at the Ninth Jedi, the Child of Hope, and all I can remember is that, the first episode we had from the first season for the Ninth Jedi, it felt like that ended on almost a cliffhanger of where do we go from here? And I can say the same exact thing for this second episode.
No. So the Ninth Jedi Child of Hope, I give it points because it tells an entirely self-contained story with an arc and stakes. So this is a very immediately direct sequel to the Ninth Jedi episode from season one. We follow our protagonist, new Jedi with her new lightsaber, as she has agreed to accompany the Marquis in his attempt to reestablish the Jedi Order. They are attacked in space almost immediately, and as part of the space, our protagonist is jettisoned into space and barely survives by landing on a drift space station, um, where she befriends the droid that lives there, bringing our badass droid count to three, who turns
Right?
out the droid's master was an ancient Jedi master that lived in this space station, was trying to study how to like restore ecologies that had been damaged and all this very important work, but had been injured and then had unfortunately perished a long time ago. But the droid was unable to find that out because he was too small to move the debris. And of course, the bounty hunters that were hunting them first come back to try to finish off our protagonist,
Hmm.
who shows off not only her skill with a lightsaber, but her cleverness in defeating the Jedi hunters, using her surroundings and her new friend.
So just as a note here, this is also it itself is not a prequel, but the Ninth Jedi is the only episode of Visions that's actually getting its own full series. So do you feel like this is going to lead into, itself a fairly satisfying long-term series?
Yes, so this episode will be getting a continuation of additional episodes, featuring, I believe, Kara as the main character. Uh, yeah. So if it's trying to establish Kara as an interesting character, I think it did so. We see, and she exemplifies what a Jedi should be, which is also comparative to the previous episode, where the fake Jedi were all impatient, and relatively violent and blasé, whereas Kara befriends and assists Tito or Teto, the lost droid. And due to her kindness, Teto is then willing to sacrifice himself, to power the escape pods so that someone at least can escape and go home, because Teto's master has been dead for many, many years.
Mhm. I've said that this is the season of precocious youth protagonists. I feel like with oh, let me get the name right. La
Kara.
La Cara. With La Cara, it feels like she's facing the stakes that are serious. She's alone in this galaxy. Um, it feels like this is almost post everything that we've seen in the Star Wars universe. Um, we're so far separated before or after that it doesn't matter. Um, so her place in the universe, along with the aesthetic of the episode, feels more serious. It feels more dire. So she doesn't seem as um, God, again, trying to say nice things. Doesn't seem as bothersome as some of the other protagonists this season might be.
No, she's a young adult Jedi who was forced to make her own decisions. So she
Mhm,
has agency, which is always a good thing in a protagonist. She makes choices, and a victory is not achieved without cost. Teto sacrifices himself so she can escape.
mhm.
Uh, After she helps him with his goals, as any Jedi should.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see more. I know we'll see more. Um,
Yeah, visually, I would say this episode is a step up even from the first Ninth Jedi episode, and that's saying something.
hmm,
That one just was largely a bottle episode. At the beginning of it, set in a different location, but then the remainder is set on a space station. This one, we see the glorious, ruined, multi-environment space station that Kara lands on. We
hmm.
get dramatic space battles. So it's visually quite stunning. Uh, it also does the cool thing with lightsabers which was also the good thing with the Ninth Jedi, where they're very deadly, and fights
Mhm.
with Jedi do not last long.
No.
They either you have to kill them or they win.
Yes. Yeah, if every single attack is threatening.
Yeah, which was the Margrave from the first season was very good at showing, and Kara obviously learned from him.
Mhm.
All
Yeah, I
right.
think this is definitely a solid installment. So I'm excited to see what else they come up with for this little miniseries they have planned.
Yeah, and this definitely felt like a natural continuation. Like she leaves,
Mhm.
and then it's like if you're going to do an episodic show, this could very easily have been episode two if the first one was episode one. We're continuing with the same character. We have a plot and a B plot. We're continuing through the galaxy with this same character who's learning lessons and exploring more of the galaxy.
I definitely agree. So then moving on to the next episode, we have the Bounty Hunters, which we have, I wouldn't say a precocious youth, but we definitely have a badass droid in this one.
Yep. Yep. So continuing our rush of having, now we're at three out of four female protagonists. This is The Bounty Hunters by Wit Studio, where our bounty hunter character who was a child soldier for a mercenary group or slash terrorist group. It's unclear. Um, Assassin's Guild. Yeah, probably that's the closest. So where she and her droid, who has a split personality, is both a healing droid, a medic droid, and an assassin droid all at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah, that conflict is tragic and at the same time funny, and it makes this droid one of the more entertaining ones that we've seen.
Yeah, this one is interesting world building and interesting moral questions. So Sven, or Seven, as she goes by, is former child soldier turned independent bounty hunter on the run, desperately needs money, takes a job, but it turns out that the person she's working for is a slaver who enslaves children and tries to hide it. But she's still conflicted because she's really just kind of in it for the payday. So I liked the obvious internal struggle where even after realizing what he was, our main character was like, how much can I work for them and still have enough of my ideals left to be who I am?
Mhm. Which is the kind of like interesting nebulous gray area that bounty hunters often do exist in because they're not exactly working for the law. They're kind of like an extension of it. And sometimes these systems themselves are corrupt. So she kind of follows that same sort of archetype as Din Djarin or even Boba Fett, trying to find her place in this line of work.
Yeah, and again, she has the badass droid at her side, who's programmed herself, but then her droid is treated as a full character with agency. Like he's at some point he's like, "I'm gonna leave. I'm taking the ship. Goodbye." And it takes him reading her messages to decide, "Okay, I'm loyal. I'll come back." But definitely one of the droids with the most agency. He's voiced. He's violent. He's dangerous. And he has goals, which is he'd like his extra personality to be removed when
Yes.
they are stable. He's
And
like, I
right. She really has no plans of doing that.
Yeah, and plus I will watch any Star Wars episode where it makes an evil fascist the enemy, or slaver or capitalist, and this guy's like all three. So
Right.
yeah, kudos for having a despicable villain who
Mhm.
puts on just enough of an affable veneer where it would have given our protagonist uh, moral cover if she'd chosen not to notice all the obvious signs that the people were enslaved, but then she's unfortunately or fortunately too observant or too principled.
Yeah, I would say it's a pretty good episode. It's I don't know, how would you rank this one as far as how it stands against some of the others we've talked about so far?
I don't necessarily need to rank them against each other, but I enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
think it was one of the more self-contained ones
Hmm.
that told a very complete story.
Yeah. And again, with the some more of the mature nature that doesn't make this seem like it's a farcical, um, well, it's just a precocious child. No, with Seven, you feel and understand her point of view and her motivations very well. So even if we're ranking up the female protagonist, this is one whose mission makes sense.
Yeah, and is not a knight in shining armor. Eventually makes the more moral choice, but you're wondering there for a bit what she's going to do.
Mhm.
All right.
And now for
Well,
something
then,
completely different.
yes. Now for something very different. Episode 5, Yuko's Treasure by
Mhm.
Kinema Citrus Company, who did this and the next one. Very different in tone, all of them. So
Mhm.
this is the most youthful of our precocious youths. Yuko's Treasure is about an orphan being raised by their nanny droid, and getting caught in the scheme of a pirate king. Definitely sort of like uh, a kindergartner romp kind of story, with a little bit of danger, a little bit of thrill.
And don't forget to mention that the caretaker droid looks like a giant teddy bear.
This is true. That has a like oven inside of it.
Right.
So, and then midway through the episode becomes evil and attempts to kill everyone, which is
Hmm.
very violent and upsetting. It almost felt like is it exploring like how adult behavior is incomprehensible to children?
Hmm.
uh, because oh, my droid's behavior makes no sense, and then oh, it needs to be reprogrammed and have these stimuli removed, and oh, returned back to normal and can be my parent again.
Yeah. It's kind of like a little bit of a loss of innocence where you realize that these perfect paragons who are caretakers aren't as perfect as they seem.
Hmm. Yeah, the actual story. So, we have the guy's parents left him, a little kid's parents died, left a ship, nanny droid's taking care of him. And then a street kid runs into him, and then together they have to find his parents after, or not find his parents, find the uh, graves of his parents while searching for his droid, who is his real parent, while figuring out what's up with this furry cosplayer pirate.
I think with an episode like this, you made a really good point with this being kind of like a preschool aimed storyline where the stakes don't have to be so high because the character, the protagonist, is so young. It reminds me of Star Wars Skeleton Crew, where all the characters are very young. So it's kind of a slow burn to realize how dire things are compared to what they look like from their perspective.
Yeah, but even Skeleton Crew, I mean, I think the youngest protagonist there is like 11,
Mhm.
perhaps, maybe.
Yeah.
And then our protagonist here is like, what, 6?
hmm
Big difference in those ages as far as the amount of agency that you can say that your main character has.
Yeah, even but with both of them compared to something like Andor, Revenge of the Sith, um, it 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 feels like what's happening in this episode with Yuko's treasure is appropriate for the sort of audience they're trying to hit.
Yeah, and there's themes of friendship because the street urchin befriends Yuko. Um, and the treasure ends up, of course, being the parent ship so that Yuko can go travel the stars. It's a very nice message, and also is very attached to basically his actual real parent, which is his droid bear.
Mhm.
Uh, which is again by other people just like, oh, we'll just get you a new droid, but to Yuko, no, this is his parent, and this specific droid is who he needs. So it's another example of a precocious child extending personhood to a droid, which is an ongoing theme of this season.
Yeah, not a badass droid, but still a very important, poignant droid relationship. For the next episode, you're going to have to help me again, because not only do I not remember the Lost Ones, but I also don't remember the first season episode it's a sequel to, The Village Bride.
So the Village Bride was from season 1, and that was about a wounded Jedi Padawan taking refuge on a largely agrarian world that was under the hegemony of a warlord who had a bunch of reprogrammed battle droids to keep the populace in line. And she witnessed the ritual of a husband to be carrying his wife up to a sacred mountain, but then having to go the next day to be the hostage for their oppressors, until the Jedi
Hmm.
Padawan decided that she was done hiding, and she would free the village, which she then did.
And
Yeah.
she performed a self-sacrifice to do that, correct? Or am I thinking
Nope, she just revealed
wrong?
herself. Yeah, her
Okay.
name being F. She is a survivor of the Great Jedi Purge. Her master died in the Purge. Um, yeah, and then we just cut to her in the future, on a planet that is, we're returning to sort of our environmentalist messaging that was present throughout season 2, with a planet where the Empire's exploitation has meant rogue carbonite just sort of permeates the planet, and
Mhm.
they keep waiting for the Empire to either come save them. People are like they're reliant on the Empire, but they don't like what the Empire's done to their planet, and they all have to live in orbit now on a habitat. Um, so F decides to come with them onto their ship. A few people realize who she is because she's not being particularly hiding who she is, but then she is spotted and reported, and soon a Star Destroyer arrives in the system to continue its oppression, but also to capture her. And then, yeah, she has to face her former master, who she thought died, but has become an Inquisitor since, which was fairly common in the Inquisitorius.
Hmm.
Uh, and F loses three of her four limbs, very Anakin style, but
Oh,
then,
yes.
but in doing so, defeats the Inquisitor, who would have killed all of her friends.
So I have regrettably nothing to offer on this episode. So for whatever reason, I got it confused with or I should say, I got the Village Bride confused with the last episode of the first season. Um, so I'm completely out of whack with this one. Um, so tell me more about your opinion on it. How do you think it acts as a standalone episode and as a response to the first season episode?
Yeah, so we're not really continuing our badass droid theme here. We are continuing our female protagonist um, theme, which will continue through the next couple episodes as well. So this is again sort of a rumination on sort of what does it mean to be a Jedi on the run, which again we've told a lot. There's lots of stories that exist in that in Star Wars media, like post Order 66, and eventually again F chooses the way of self-sacrifice. Even when other people would prefer she not sacrifice herself, like people beg her not to go, but she goes anyway to turn herself over and prevent, the refugee ship and habitat from being blown out of the sky by the Star Destroyer. So it's yeah, and it's another thing area of seeing an Inquisitor, a very powerful one. So this is not. We're used to seeing Inquisitors being bodied by Jedi, but F is certainly no pushover. But even so, her master is a very powerful Inquisitor, and she knows in most circumstances she would stand no chance. So she does something risky and gives up her arm and her leg to defeat her master. So that part was fairly brutal, but also well done as far as the self-sacrifice that F was willing to do. Uh,
And done
but
in more of a poetic sense.
mhm. Yeah, overall, I'm fairly satisfied with it as a sequel. It's showing we have giant seclusion and now Jedi wandering. F does survive and is rescued. So now, what would be the next steps? Are there any next steps for this story? But does it call for a further continuation? Maybe. But did it tell a good story while it was here? Yes.
And do you think that the Village Bride is deserving of having a sequel in the first place from all the episodes from season one?
It was one of the most like cerebral investigations of like what is the Force, because the people of that planet had a different conception of it. What does it mean to be a Jedi? Do you if you're no longer part of the Order, do you still have to protect the innocent? And I think this continues that. It's like how does that now apply to the world outside of your exiled planet? So overall, did it necessarily need a sequel? No, but I think there was more to explore with the characters involved. So I'm not unhappy that it got a sequel.
Definitely understand. Yeah. It sounds like in comparison to what we have with the duel from the first episode of this season, that it actually took some of the questions from the first season and portrayed them in a different light for this third one.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Right. So now we come on to episode 7, The Smuggler, by Studio Trigger. This is actually one of Studio Trigger's more tame episodes, but and is thematically very similar to sort of the bounty hunters.
Mhm.
Um, yep, so this one did not have a badass droid, other than in a brief scene where it threatens our protagonist Cheetah. But one thing I did enjoy about
Precocious young adult, at least.
yeah, so precocious, but also like has a base level of competency, is a working professional,
Right.
um, even if she's making sometimes bad decisions. Uh, but I like your protagonist doesn't have to be perfect, which I like. We do have a lost Jedi present in this episode, but they are not the main character, are in fact kind of the creepy advisor character, which is interesting. And we see a Jedi who has chosen not to rejoin the Order, but to instead remain independent and hide their powers to serve a political faction, which was forbidden to the Jedi. So we see a Jedi engaging in the vice of loyalty, which they're not normally allowed. Overall, I found the most interesting part of this episode to be how it depicts um, the Empire colonizing this planet and removing its cultural touchstones. So they depose the royal family to deny the ability to depict them in art. and then are trying to arrest the one remaining prince. So there's no rallying cry around for the people. Definitely a very real tactic that's used in real life, um, and how that is resisted and challenged by the people who live there was an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah. I think at this point when we were watching, some of my like latter day confusion is that yes, this episode feels very much like the Bounty Hunters, where it's kind of from the same angle. I don't know if that's coming from a place of Disney Star Wars had a mandate of okay, here are the kind of stories we're looking for, or if it's just something that is more subliminal in culture, where at this point we want to have this kind of protagonist and this kind of story interacting with droids in this kind of way, and the Force should be portrayed in that kind of way. Um, but I think it's at this point where it started to feel a little familiar to me.
Yeah, like, do I think the Smuggler is a bad episode? No, but do I like the cool character of the hidden Jedi with her, um, like sort of weird foreboding aura? Sure, but I didn't necessarily need this episode to exist.
If we were
Well,
to,
she's
there's room to make. I mean, the same studio made The Elder from the first season, which is one of my favorite episodes from that season. It was set right in the High Republic. We had this ancient Sith master who just wanted to fight, and like that is all he cared about. And he was enthusiastic and creepy. And you have a clear interplay between the Jedi Master and Jedi Knight who have to duel him. Um, I would have not mind seeing a sequel to that.
Yeah. So yeah, we had another story about a smuggler trying to smuggle a prince off of a planet, trying to, and then ended up doing the right thing, even when there's not as much money involved. Is it a good story? Yes. Was it doing necessarily something original? No.
Right.
All right. Well, this brings us on to our penultimate episode. Um, we're coming into again now. We're getting into much more of our more experimental episodes, but this is episode 8, "The Bird of Paradise" by Polygon Pictures.
Mhm.
So, Connor, you like this one more than I did, so I'll let you lead off on this one.
I guess to give sort of a general overview of this one, we have a Jedi who is fighting a Sith and becomes blinded. She's a student, and the entire episode deals with her having to understand and overcome the new life that she's dealing with not being able to see. And it's, because she is unable to see, it's animated in a very colorful, vibrant, impressionistic way. So it's I would say it's the most artistically rendered episode that we have, the most surreal episode we have this season, but we still have one more to talk about, which somehow overcomes it at every turn. Um, so I appreciate these kinds of episodes. It reminds me of one from the second season of Visions.
Very first one with the painter.
It might be. Yes. So the episode called Sith, where we have this painter who is trying to create media and it's being continuously corrupted by this darkness. And it's her search and trying to find that balance. Um, we have that same kind of journey here where our uh, protagonist Nakame has to deal with her own emotions, with her own dark side, and through that, she's able to reconnect with the Force and see. So these are the kinds of stories that I like just because it takes concepts. What's at the core of Star Wars with what is the Force? What is the Force used for? What does it mean to be a Jedi? What does it mean to be connected to the Force? And it portrays that in a very artistic, emotional way.
I
So
had trouble connecting with the protagonist of this one because I found Nakime insufferable. She whines the whole time. I'm like, it's like, would normal people have a bad time with this? Yes, but you are a Jedi. You chose
yeah.
this life. Um,
But
and
she's a youngling. Anakin was a precocious youth, if we think about it.
How well did that turn out for the Jedi Order, huh? Yeah,
And
so
how well did that turn out for the average audience's viewing experience of Attack of the Clones?
well, it's been a while since Attack of the Clones came out, but I imagine it had a negative impact.
Oh yeah, just the whining of Anakin. I see that at the same time. It's in part of its own contained story. I can kind of get it because if you're someone who is struggling, who has to overcome an obstacle, it's not going to necessarily be an easy um, journey in order to do so, and that'll lead to anger, frustration, all of the things that um, sort of tempt people to turn to the dark side.
Yeah, so Nakime is blinded, and again, this is very much Cave of Dagobah stuff, where she wanders around, receiving visions, whines the whole time about she doesn't know what to do or where she's going, can't see at all. But then the poison slowly starts to fade, or the wounds starts to heal. It's unclear about exactly what took her vision, or if it's psychosomatic, or is she really even in these woods? Because then she meets like a spirit of some kind at the end, and it has been healed.
And is the spirit her overcoming the sort of internal toil that she's had to deal with? I don't know. I mean, with any kind of surreal project, the purpose is to get this kind of conversation going, to figure out what the purpose behind it was. Um,
Yeah, if you're gonna watch this episode, you're 50% watching it for the visuals, which are beautiful. So our blind protagonist starts seeing the world in different colors and shapes from her hearing and assigning shapes and places, and then has some powerful force visions using gems and things like that to before having to face her own darkness and defeat it. So that's interesting. It's just you don't get any character development really for many people, and she just whines the whole time. Part of me wants to be like, you had training on this. You were a Jedi. Should
mhm.
you like? You can have problems. There can be challenges, but you whine about it.
Yeah, I can definitely understand with, especially in the whole of season three. Not to say that the other protagonists were, whiny, but we're dealing with the same kind of character going through not similar challenges so much, but we're still dealing with that same kind of protagonist. And
Hmm.
for it to be, that's again why that one episode of season two, The Bandits of Golak, I'm so close to not enjoying it because of how infantile the child is, but she's so young that it's like she can't help it. She
Yeah,
she is that,
she's from a
yeah.
sheltered family. Her
Hmm.
behavior makes sense in the context that she's in, whereas
For a Jedi,
Nakame,
yeah.
she like it goes right from like I would have bought her slowly breaking down over time, but we don't see like her reserve getting cracked. She just starts off whiny
Yeah.
and then gets even worse. So,
I guess my last note on that is when you have like a series of doctors who all graduate the same year, you have a doctor who's the head of their class. You will also have the doctor who's the bottom of their class. So maybe she wasn't the best Jedi to start out with, but that's the
that's why
only
she needs
defense I can
the
come up with, really.
yes, this is why she needs the training exercise with the spirits of the forest, being left there by her master, the force
Right.
testing her to see if she's actually a worthy Jedi.
Oh yeah. That's the only way I can reshape that in my mind because put that in a different episode that wasn't as well animated, and I would have the same kind of complaints.
Gotcha. That's the Birds of Paradise. Visually beautiful, whiny protagonist. You can decide if you like the themes. No badass droid in this one, but most of the time it's just her in the wilderness. So,
Mhm. And then
oh
we get the
right,
final episode of the season entitled Black. And I don't know if there's a story to describe in this one because it kind of seems like it's all about the experience and the aesthetic.
yeah. So, Black by David Productions is a surrealistic horror, impressionistic metaphor driven visual and oral assault on the person watching it. It has been both famous and infamous since it came out as being so experimental. I think avant garde is the appropriate word for this.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it's not really asking you to enjoy it, I would say, which is, I would say, a point in its favor.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not like it's like I'm not going to tell you a coherent story. I'm not going to give you themes. I'm not going to give you dialogue. We're going to get horrific blob monsters eating one-armed stormtroopers. We're going to get the one-armed stormtrooper reliving his most traumatic moments. He possibly has a split personality. This might be his dying thoughts before he crashes off the
Mhm.
exploding Death Star 2. But we're not exactly sure because this is all set within the mind of a stormtrooper.
Yeah, it's that POV. It gives you that, I would say, post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's happening while the battle is occurring. Whatever battle that might be, or it's the sum of all battles. It was difficult to watch, and I don't mean that it was bad, but I mean it's not something that's inviting and encouraging you to appreciate and engage the aesthetics. It's very much an attack on your sensibilities, and that's a very much um, reflective of what war should be portrayed as.
Yep, and then another point that's challenging for Black is that it's asking you to sympathize with the dying thoughts of a stormtrooper who, by their own depiction of the episode, has done terrible things, burned villages, shot people, and they appear to regret it at this point, though we get no dialogue from them. But at some point, it's like, yes, this is all horrible that you're being subjected to this as you are either dying or falling out of orbit or doing whatever. But ultimately, this is your fault.
Yeah, you're the enemy force in this. You are the baddies in this case. So, how does this sit with you? Like, what was your experience watching this? How would you, you know, as far as did you enjoy this? Did you not enjoy this? Is it a good installment of Visions? Would you rather see something else? How would you regard this episode?
As a piece of art, it's not my thing, but as a thing for visions, it's an excellent use of the medium.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
where else could you do? I want to do a 15-minute visual exploration of the dying thoughts of someone plummeting from a space station. Like
Hmm.
that's it's ambitious, it's artistic, and again, and it wasn't trying to be pleasant or understandable. So, I mean, but it still managed, I think, to be consistent thematically, which is also difficult to do.
Yeah, but
Um,
something surreal, definitely.
yeah, so as a work of surrealism, great. I'm not like the tinge of the surreal inside other works I can handle is something being purely surreal. I'm like, give me some meat on these bones. Give me some
Yeah.
bones for this meat, rather. So it's not my favorite thing, but I am very glad that Visions is a place where someone could go and tell this story.
Yes, I'm glad this exists. I'm
I
glad
don't
that
need to watch it again.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I'm quite a fan of different film genres that are challenging and uncomfortable, and because I do enjoy being challenged, but at the same, point, yes, I in, no regard need to see this again. I've had it, I've experienced it, we're good. So it's strange to place on, a ranking of episodes, but I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad it exists.
Hey, and there are no precocious youths, so point in favor from Connor.
Yeah. So yeah, that brings us, to the end of Vision Season 3. What do you think your highlight was?
If I had to pick my favorite episode from this season, hmm, I would probably pick the continuation of the Ninth Jedi, Child of Hope. I
Yeah.
think that it had a more cohesive story than the Lost Ones. I felt like it. did the great work of introducing a character, giving them immediate characterization with this character of Teto. Um, and I enjoy that it's going to be continued.
Mhm.
I thought some of the other ones were a little bit like the bounty hunters and the smuggler were a little bit samey. The one with the giant teddy bear was, of course, interesting, but not quite my speed.
Yeah,
And
they remind me of the one episode where the like little cutesy droid became a Jedi at the end from season one.
Toby, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with the continuation. As I would say, I think I said The Ninth Jedi was my favorite episode from season one, and I will continue making it sequel my favorite episode in season three. Interested to see where we go in this universe where there are factions that oppose the Jedi, and there are ancient drifting space stations, and we have our few rogue Jedi attempting to make a difference.
Hmm. Yeah, I
How about you, Connor? If
definitely
you had to
see
pick
that and
one as your
agree.
favorite.
I think that, I do enjoy the Bird of Paradise because of, even though the characters might be grating, I agree with that. I do enjoy the whole arc that the story has tied in with the animation. Um, that felt very standalone. It didn't feel like much else in the season resembled that. But I also enjoyed the dual payback because of how vicious its depiction of a Jedi could be. Um, that's not something I ever anticipated, but to have a frightening villainous Jedi character who is truly a Jedi and not a dark side user is something that I've not seen before. So yeah, I would definitely put those two at the top of mine. And I hope that with the next season we get another round of just animators from all over the world because I think this is like really the place where creators of all kinds of different voices can express themselves and um, really explore different areas of the universe we haven't seen.
Agreed. Definitely a solid choice for a favorite episode. Excited to see where they go with visions in the future, and interested to see what themes they go. This season was all about powerful young women and droids that are have lots of weapons. So, uh,
Very
and
important, very impressive droids.
and how does a Jedi function when they are isolated from their fellows? That's the other
Yeah.
theme, I think.
Mhm.
Right. Well,
So yeah,
that said,
good luck to Disney with the fourth season. I hope they are able to do something very interesting with it.
yep. This has been our survey of Visions Season 3 on Talking Star Wars. Join us next week for more Star Wars content.
We'll see you sometime soon in a galaxy right here.